The colony alarm had been screaming for 6 minutes when Sarah stopped running. Not because she was tired, because she had made a decision. Behind her, New Carthage Colony, 3,000 souls, prefab shelters, hydroponic bays, 12 years of human work carved into the red rock of Kepler, 442b, was evacuating toward the mountain bunkers. Children were crying. Adults were shouting coordinates into comlinks. The emergency lights painted everything in ugly amber pulses. Ahead of her, the source of the alarm was crossing the perimeter fence. The Velshari came in packs. That much the early scouts had reported before the scouts stopped reporting. 8-limbed, low to the ground, with chitinous hides that reflected light in oily, nauseating rainbows. Each one the size of a terrestrial rhinoceros. Each one moving with the liquid speed of something that had been an apex predator on its homeworld for 100 million years. The perimeter sensors counted 19 of them. Sarah checked her loadout. Left hand, a USCF-issue plasma repeater, military surplus, modified for a faster discharge cycle by someone who clearly knew what they were doing. Right hand, a custom-built kinetic accelerator, twin barrels, loaded with tungsten core penetrators she had machined herself over 3 long evenings in the colony workshop. She had not been a soldier. She had been a structural engineer. Past tense, because the moment she picked up those guns and turned around, she had stopped being whatever she was before. She thumbed both weapons to active. Sarah. The voice crackled in her earpiece. Jack, her partner, the colony's head of security, currently organizing the evacuation from the command post 2 kilometers behind her. His voice had a particular quality she recognized, the very deliberate calm of a man who was afraid and refusing to let it make his decisions. Sarah, the evac vectors are clear. You need to move. The eastern corridor isn't clear, she said. There are 4 Velshari between the medical bay and the bunker entrance. Family unit shelter is still inside. A pause. How many people? 11, including the Reyes kids. She began walking forward. I'm handling it. With 2 guns. I have very good aim. The first Velshari saw her at 60 meters. It turned its body toward her, all 8 limbs reorienting with horrible mechanical precision, its forward sensory clusters fixing on this small bipedal creature standing alone on the open ground between the colony's outer ring and the eastern residential block. Sarah had read everything available on Velshari behavior during the 3 weeks since first contact. The xenobiologists called their pack dynamic evaluative dominance testing. A Velshari unit encountering an unknown entity first assessed threat level before committing to engagement. The process took approximately 4 seconds. She did not give it 4 seconds. The kinetic accelerator fired with a sound like a thunderclap compressed into a single sharp syllable. The tungsten core penetrator crossed 60 meters in the time it took the Velshari to process that she had moved, and it struck the creature's primary sensory cluster, the dense neural mass centered just above the forward limb junction, with approximately 40,000 joules of force. The Velshari went down like a building being demolished. The other 3 in the eastern corridor turned. Sarah was already moving, not retreating, angling, cutting sideways to break up their targeting geometry, because she had worked out on paper 3 weeks ago that Velshari attack patterns were optimized for prey that either froze or ran in a straight line. Their lateral tracking was slower than their forward tracking. If you moved in arcs, you forced them to continuously recalculate. She had drawn diagrams. Jack had found the diagrams a week ago and quietly set them aside, because sometimes loving someone meant not examining too closely what they were capable of when they were afraid for the people around them. The second Velshari closed fast, faster than the xenobiology reports suggested, which meant either the reports were wrong or this particular one was exceptional. Sarah switched the plasma repeater to her primary, let the creature commit to its attack vector, then stepped inside the arc of its forward limbs, a distance that was technically suicidal, close enough to smell the biological heat coming off its carapace, and fired upward at point-blank range into the softer ventral tissue behind its forward limb junction. 3 plasma bursts. The creature collapsed sideways. Its momentum carried it past her. She stepped back, already tracking the third. Third and fourth were moving together, coordinated, which meant they'd adapted, which meant they were smarter than the report said, which meant she needed to stop following the reports and start improvising. She threw herself flat as the third lunged, felt the displaced air from its primary strike claw missing her by centimeters, rolled, came up with both weapons firing simultaneously. The kinetic accelerator punching through the third one's carapace from the side, while the plasma repeater tracked the fourth across a 40-degree arc. The fourth took 4 plasma bursts before it stopped moving. 12 seconds. For Velshari down. The eastern corridor was clear. Sarah stood up, checked her charge levels, and started running toward the medical bay. Eastern corridor is clear, she said into the comm. Tell the Reyes family to move now. Fast as they can. Copy. Jack's voice. Still doing the deliberate calm thing. There's a problem. Define problem. The main pack. 15 Velshari. They've changed course. They're not heading for the bunker entrance anymore. A pause that felt very carefully controlled. They're heading toward your position. Sarah looked at the terrain around her. Open ground. The medical bay to her left. The colony's central processor tower ahead of her. A 60-meter ferroconcrete structure that housed the colony's power grid management, water recycling systems, and primary comm relay. She thought for exactly 2 seconds. Get everyone into the bunker, she said. Seal it. Sarah. Jack. She said his name the way she said important things, quietly, without decoration. Trust me. Seal the bunker. A longer pause this time. I've always trusted you, he said. That's never been the problem. She heard the bunker seals engage in the background of his signal. Heard the heavy hydraulic thud of 3,000 people becoming safe. Then she looked at the processor tower and started running toward it. What the xenobiology reports had gotten right, what every field researcher who'd survived contact with the Velshari had noted, was that they were drawn to electromagnetic activity, dense power sources. The running theory was that their primary sensory clusters processed bioelectric fields as a hunting mechanism on their homeworld, and sufficiently large power sources registered to them as enormous, irresistible prey. New Carthage's central processor tower put out approximately 4.2 megawatts on a standard operational day. Sarah reached the base of the tower, found the manual override panel Jack had shown her during her first week on the colony. He had been meticulous about making sure she knew where every emergency system lived, because he was that kind of person, and she pulled it open. The tower had a surge capacity function, emergency power cycling for grid clearing events. It was designed to discharge the entire stored energy buffer in a single controlled pulse, used when a power fault threatened to cascade through the colony's systems. It was not designed as a weapon. Sarah had spent 3 weeks thinking about what else it could be. She jacked her comm link directly into the manual override port and started typing a command sequence she had memorized the way other people memorized poetry, by reading it over and over in the small hours of the morning, when the colony was quiet and the fear was loudest. What are you doing? Jack, in her ear. He could see her on the perimeter sensors. The Velshari are attracted to the power signature, she said, still typing. I'm going to make the power signature very, very large for approximately 3 seconds. The surge radius. I've done the math. Sarah, if you're inside the surge radius. I said I've done the math. She finished the sequence. Her finger rested on the execute key. On the perimeter display, 15 Velshari were converging on the tower at speed, drawn by the power activity of her override access like sharks to blood in the water. Get the sensor array to log everything. The xenobiology team is going to want this data. I'm not thinking about the xenobiology team right now. I know. She watched the Velshari close the distance. 200 meters. 150. I also did the math on the other thing. The safe distance for a human in a survival suit with non-conductive boots and a grounded comm link. A very long pause. You're wearing the non-conductive boots, he said slowly. I'm wearing the non-conductive boots, she confirmed. I put them on this morning. I thought today felt like a non-conductive boots day. 100 meters. I love you, Jack said. I want that on the record. It's on the record. 50 meters. The ground was vibrating now, 15 enormous creatures converging at full sprint. Tell the Reyes kids I said hello. She hit execute and dropped flat behind the tower's reinforced base, curling tight, both weapons clutched to her chest. The world turned white. The electromagnetic pulse from the processor tower's full buffer discharge crossed a radius of approximately 230 meters in 0.003 seconds. To the Velshari, whose primary sensory clusters processed bioelectric fields with the exquisite sensitivity of a specialized organ evolved over millions of years, Organs that were extraordinary advantages in their natural environment and extraordinary vulnerabilities in this one. It was like staring directly into a star. All 15 stopped moving simultaneously. Then, one by one, they folded. Sarah lay on the scorched ground behind the tower base, ears ringing, every hair on her body standing electrically to attention, both guns still in her hands, staring up at the amber emergency lights of New Carthage Colony. Her non-conductive boots had done their job. She had done the math correctly. She allowed herself, in the silence that followed, to breathe. Jack found her 11 minutes later, after the all-clear, after the bunker seals released, after 3,000 people began the cautious process of coming back out into a world that was, against considerable odds, still theirs. He didn't say anything for a moment, just crouched next to her on the scorched ground, looked at the 19 immobile Velshari scattered across the perimeter, and then looked at her. "You did the math," he said finally. "I always do the math," Sarah said. She sat up slowly. Her hands were still holding the guns. Plasma repeater, left. Kinetic accelerator, right. She looked at them for a moment, then set them down on the ground beside her, very carefully, like things that had served their purpose and deserved to be put down gently. Jack put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned into it. Around them, New Carthage Colony breathed again, lights stabilizing as the backup grid engaged, voices carrying across the open ground, the sound of children being told it was over, it was safe, they could come out now. Sarah listened to all of it. She had always known exactly what she was protecting. That, in the end, was why the math had always been worth doing.